this video, I'm going to teach you how to make a legend for your reflected ceiling plan and electrical plan. Now, keep in mind, I have not yet gone through and adjusted the locations of all of these elements that we have added since we've made some changes to the ceiling, but that's okay. I can do that at any time. What I do want to teach you now, though, is how to make a legend for your plan. Because again, anyone who looks at this plan is going to need to know what each of these symbols represents and any specific information on them. So in order to create a legend, all you have to do is go to this legend tab over here. And if you right click on it and hit new legend, you can create the name here. So we're going to call this reflected ceiling plan and electrical plan legend. And I'm going to keep it at 1/8 inch scale because the plan on our sheet is also at 1/8 inch scale. And I'm going to hit OK, and voila, nothing happens. It's a blank, it's a blank page. And that's okay because that's what we're going to create right now. It's really just Revit creating an additional view that we can add onto our sheet. So I'm going to begin by just drawing a detail line. And so as we're creating our legend, we're going to begin by, in this video, creating the legend structure and the detail with detail lines and text boxes. Then I'm going to show you how this is going to look on the sheet. Then we're going to place the legend components into the legend and then place the legend on the sheet. So to begin, I'm just going to create a simple detail line, and you'll see in a minute why. So this is just my detail line box. And now I'm going to go to my sheet with the reflected ceiling plan on it. And you can see I've shifted this over just a little bit. And now I'm going to drag my empty legend over onto my sheet. Okay, so you can see now it's really small, and we need to be able to know how much room we need or how much room is available on our sheet to make this legend. So what I'm going to do is move these elements down, and it can go as long as we need it to. But this is going to be essentially the guidelines for my legend, because there's kind of a lot of information that we need to include because there's a lot of symbols on this plan. But we don't have a lot of room on our sheet. So normally we have room in our legend to put some notes, but we may have to do a kind of a note text box on this reflected ceiling plan sheet because I don't think we're going to have room for it here. But now that we've got the box that we will have room that indicates how much room we have, I'm going to go ahead and move this down, change my box just a little bit more to make room for that title. And that's where we're going to start with our legend. So now if you go back here, now we have an understanding of what we have to place where. There's two categories at the very minimum that we need to include on our legend, and that's going to be the symbol and the description. So what we have now is we've got a detail line here, and I'm going to copy, pardon me, I'm going to copy this. And I'm going to create a text box. Now it's 1/8 inch Arial, which is fine. We'll start with the label for symbol. And we will create another text box for description. And I'm going to move it over. Again, just being so conscious of the limitations of space. And I'll go ahead and copy this line. Okay. So now we've got the beginnings of a table, and now I'm going to put the symbols in. Now, Revit is so smart because you've already placed families into that reflected ceiling plan. And so Revit has a memory of the symbols that you're going to need. So if you go over to annotate and hit the drop down for component, you select this legend component, and now you can see there's a drop down here that's got all of the families that we've brought into our project. And so you can see it's got a view set for section. We actually want it to just be a plan view. So let's go ahead and just place a couple of these in here. We know we've got a recess can. And look, there's our symbol right there. And it's tiny because it's to scale. And it's going to match the size of the symbol on the plan that's right next to it. See how the view changed? We also have a pendant light. Notice how it's going into alignment right there. They're centered. We've got mechanical equipment. We've got the fluorescent light. Now notice they're getting a little bit wonky. So I'm always going to be probably what I would end up doing eventually is just drawing a detail line down the middle and aligning all of the elements here. But what I do with my legend is I group all the lighting together, all of the mechanical equipment, fire suppression, electrical, everything kind of together so that I make sure that I don't miss anything. But once you've got a couple of symbols on there, then what you can do is create an additional text box and cell for this information. So I'm going to start by copying this line a couple of times, and I'm just going to show you how to do a couple of these, and then the rest you'll be able to do on your own. Okay, now the issue, of course, is, again, we're tight on space. So we do need to leave enough room for the description. Now, 1/8 inch text is small enough. To go much smaller is going to kind of make some people complain. So I'm going to shorten the title for symbol. And I'm going to move these elements over just to give as much room as possible to my description. And eventually it's going to become important. So I'm going to draw a detail line down straight down the middle of this thing so that all my symbols are aligned. So if I want to align this, I can grab this and then the center line of this. Oh, is it not going to let me? Sometimes a line comes right down the middle for that, but it's not going to let me. So in any case, I'll just show you. We're going to move it over like that. If it splits the difference too much, then you can kind of zoom in a little closer. So I'm going to make sure that all these are aligned and centered within their box. And then I'm going to create a text box here. And this is going to be now you can see it's so big, and this isn't even the shortest name. So I'm going to go ahead and edit the type, and I'm going to have the title or the description of these elements be in 16th inch. And it's really just because our plan is long and thin and our sheet is 11 by 17, and we're not going to change the size now. So this text is going to have to get small. The one thing that I do want to teach you how to do before we move on is I want to teach you how to create your ceiling finishes, because that can also be placed on a reflected ceiling plan legend. And so we're going to just create a couple of filled regions, because remember, we've got several ceiling types. So I'm going to create a filled region. And it's going to be 2 by 4 or 2 by 2, pardon me. Actually, let's do a 4 by 4 so that it'll show and look good for the acoustical ceiling tile. So we've got that. Hopefully it fits. Okay, so we've got a filled region for our acoustical ceiling tile, and it just barely fits. But that's not the correct finish, because that's not how it shows on our reflected ceiling plan. Notice it's showing me the acoustical ceiling tile plan view that we used for a filled region in our wall sections earlier. So we want to go ahead and change that. And it'd be great if there was nothing. Now you could have just drawn a box, but we're going to, so that's the element that, or the part on the legend that shows that our acoustical ceiling tile looks like that. We're going to do another filled region, same size. Come on, you. Okay, so for this filled region, we're going to do, I believe countertop was the same as our concrete ceiling here. So yeah, that was our, let's take a look at that one more time. I'm going to do edit type. And remember when we changed our ceiling finish, that was sand dense. See, remember when we went over, see, it was sand dense over here. Okay. Let's double check. Ah, concrete. I was right the first time. Okay, and let's just check that finish because it says countertop, but it's concrete. Okay, so that's good. So it's going to look the same when it's sitting next to the finish. And then the only other thing that we've got to do is create the finish for the wood ceiling. So you ought to be able to do that now that you've seen how I've done this one. And those I usually put at the very bottom. So you've got your placement of the symbols, you've got the placement for the, or you've got how to create filled regions for the ceilings, you know how to create your text box. So now it's just a matter of dragging it onto the sheet if you haven't done so already, and it will populate here. And once complete, you should be able to see all of this nice and neat, adjust your graphic standards here to make sure that it's all aligned properly. Okay, we'll change that. I am going to go ahead and rename this so that the level 2 is in all caps. And once complete, this should all be filled in and it should just fit. The only other thing that we will do is we'll go ahead and add a text box here that says a series of notes. And I know kind of right off the bat, we may need to add some information about the location of the outlets. So once we place those on, we'll put a little note. Something like, we would also in the real world add something like, you know, electrical contractor to verify placement. But keep in mind, of course, that all the subcontractors would be reviewing this plan. This is really just a preliminary version so that they are aware of our design intent. And so now that we've added that note, because we're not going to have room for it here, which is where I would ordinarily put it, we would have to put a little note here. And that outlet's at 36 inches AFF because of course it's sitting on a countertop so we can plug a coffee pot into it. We're going to do the 16-inch. And move it over just a little bit. And the rest of the outlets are probably okay right where they're at. Okay. So that is how you create a legend. You bring in legend components. You create the legend itself just with detail lines and text boxes. And again, you have to make sure that on the outset you have an understanding of the shape that the legend needs to take. Otherwise, it it may not fit. If you create a legend sort of without thinking about the sheet, then the legend could be all the way over here, and they take so long to make that you want to think about that right away. And then also keep in mind, just organize the symbols according to the systems that they fall into so that you don't miss any. And then if you really want to make sure that you're 100% accurate, what you do is you go symbol by symbol and you cross out the symbols on the plan with a pen. Maybe print it out first, cross out the symbols on the plan along with the legend and make sure that you've gotten everything that you need to include.